Have you ever stumbled upon a secret so scandalous it threatened to unravel everything you thought you knew? In this tumultuous tale of hidden lies and shocking revelations, one woman claims to have miscarried a child she never lost, and a millionaire discovers his own wife is mysteriously raising that very same baby. Amid betrayals and hidden agendas, trust is tested and love is put on trial. This story brims with twists, heartbreak, and desperation, a real-life drama that will make you question how well you truly know the people around you. Buckle up. You're about to experience deceit like never before. Julian Levesque was, by all appearances, a man who lived the dream. From his penthouse suite overlooking the shimmering skyline of Manhattan to his wide-reaching philanthropic endeavors, Julian had built a sterling reputation. The son of a self-made real estate tycoon, he had multiplied the family fortune several times over with astute investments, turning him into a millionaire by the age of 30. Accomplished, handsome, and known for his impeccable taste, he was envied by many and idolized by more. On the surface, Julian's life was picture perfect. He was married to Serafina Serra to her friends, a graceful, warm-hearted woman from a modest upbringing in upstate New York. Their story was the stuff of modern fairy tales. Sarah worked as an intern in the PR department of one of Julian's smaller enterprises. They crossed paths in a break room, sparks flew, and their whirlwind romance ended in marriage. Now they were approaching their third anniversary, and Sarah was pregnant with their first child. But behind every elegant facade lies the potential for hidden cracks. Despite the loving glances at galas, the dazzling pictures on social media, and the philanthropic events they hosted together, Julian and Sarah had a complicated dynamic. Their busy schedules often meant they slept in separate time zones, meeting at breakfast to exchange hurried kisses before darting off to chase the day's demands. Little did Julian know just how wide the chasm was growing between them, one that would soon swallow his world in scandal. It all began with hushed phone calls at odd hours, abrupt ends to conversations when Julian approached, and a sense that the vibe in the penthouse had changed. Sarah's usual beaming smile grew thinner, always accompanied by a nervous glance over her shoulder. She was 5 months pregnant, glowing physically, yet emotionally she seemed distant, as though a storm brewed just behind her eyes. One evening, after a particularly long day, Julian found Sarah in the living room, cradling a cell phone, her knuckles white as she gripped it. On the screen, he glimpsed a familiar number before she snatched it away. That same number, associated with an older friend Sarah had grown up with, seemed to appear over and over. It could have been harmless, yet something about the tense expression on her face told him otherwise. Julian's suspicion grew deeper when he realized Sarah was heading to her prenatal checkups without him. Each time he offered to clear his schedule, she insisted it was nothing major and that there's no need to fuss. Her breezy dismissals only fueled his worry. Was she hiding a health issue? Or did she simply want to keep her husband away from the doctor's office for some reason? The tension escalated one evening when Julian returned home unexpectedly early and heard Sarah whispering over the phone, "I promise I'll take care of everything, just don't come here unannounced again." Then silence. When he asked her who it was, she claimed it was her father, an aging man who supposedly needed financial help. But Sarah's father, James Gilmore, was a semi-retired mechanic living a comfortable life. He wouldn't need urgent, secret money from his daughter. Behind the elaborate curtains, the perfect photos, and the charitable image, a web of lies was being spun. Julian's unsuspecting heart was about to be thrust into a realm of deception he was ill-prepared for. And at the center of it all, a child who, unbeknownst to him, was not the blessing it appeared to be, or at least, not the only blessing in the mix. No one could have guessed that soon The very definition of family would be twisted into an unrecognizable shape, foreshadowing the turmoil to come. Julian's life took another bizarre turn when he found a piece of paper scribbled with the name Marina Morgan. It was tucked beneath a stack of junk mail on the kitchen countertop. He'd seen that name once before. Sarah had mentioned it in passing, describing her as an old acquaintance from her hometown. But it struck him as odd that Sarah would scribble the name on a slip of paper with such urgency, only to hide it beneath unrelated letters. Marina Morgan was an enigma in Sarah's past. She was once rumored to be a wild child who vanished from the small town of Stonebridge after stirring up trouble, only to reappear periodically with a new scandal in tow. By the time Sarah went to college, Marina was long gone from the local circles. No one seemed to know where she'd ended up or what her life looked like. Why was Marina's name surfacing now? And why did Sarah's voice quiver each time it arose? Julian debated confronting his wife, but a strange sense of dread held him back. It felt as if opening that door might unlock a flood of secrets that would forever shatter the world he knew. His uncertainty only grew after Sarah began receiving small packages with no return address. One arrived during a weekend morning. Julian noticed it was mailed from a different state, New Jersey, and postmarked with a tiny heart sticker on the corner. Carefully opening it when Sarah was out, he found a single item inside, a plush baby blanket embroidered with Baby G. Confusion set in. Sarah's last name before marrying him was Gilmore, so Baby G might imply Baby Gilmore. But was that from a friend or relative who couldn't recall Sarah's married name? Or was it from Marina Morgan, someone Sarah was unwilling to discuss? In the following days, Sarah acted restless and depressed, often locking herself in the guest bedroom to take calls. When Julian pressed her on who was calling, she'd muster a forced smile, claiming it was her father or maybe a cousin planning a surprise for the baby. Yet that tension in her voice never lifted. At night, Julian noticed that she'd wake up gasping, as if haunted by nightmares she refused to share. Life continued in a swirl of uncertainty. Julian's business obligations demanded his focus, forcing him to travel frequently. On a short trip to Los Angeles for a property development venture, he found himself unsettled, thinking obsessively about Sarah's mysterious behavior. Even in board meetings with wealthy investors, he was distracted. At dinner with his best friend, Edward Torres, a high-end realtor who had known Julian since college, he finally confessed his fears. Edward, a level-headed man, listened intently. He suggested that Sarah's anxiety might be related to the pregnancy itself. Women can get overwhelmed, Edward reasoned, and if there's some personal issue from her past creeping up, maybe she's trying to handle it quietly. Yet that explanation only half satisfied Julian. He recalled the phone calls, the hush, the packages, and the name Marina Morgan. He wondered if Sarah had done something before they married that she was ashamed to reveal now. Still, his devotion to her ran deep. If she was in trouble, he wanted to help. But Sarah's behavior suggested she was protecting someone else, or maybe protecting Julian himself from a truth too explosive to handle. Unbeknownst to him, that truth was creeping nearer. Marina Morgan was not just a phantom from Sarah's past. She was about to burst into their present life like a tornado, fueling drama, heartbreak, and revelations that would put all of Sarah's carefully constructed secrets at risk of unraveling. And for Julian, the greatest shock was yet to come. The day Marina Morgan appeared on their doorstep was a day that would forever live in Julian's memory. It was early afternoon. Sunlight poured through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse, reflecting against the polished marble floors. Julian had returned home earlier than usual, hoping to surprise Sarah with lunch. Instead, he found a striking woman standing just outside the elevator, wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying a well-worn duffel bag. Her eyes immediately scanned Julian from head to toe. She looked well-traveled and not at all frazzled, despite the suspiciously heavy bag. Without waiting for an invitation, she strode right into the foyer as though she owned the place. That's when Sarah appeared, face pale, heart pounding in her chest like a drum roll at the world's most disastrous circus performance. "Sarah, darling," Marina said with a sugar-sweet drawl. "You didn't tell me Julian would be here. We have so much to discuss." Julian's mind raced with 1,000 questions. The tension in Sarah's eyes was palpable. She tried to maintain composure, introducing Marina as an old friend from my hometown. But no matter how thoroughly Sarah attempted to spin it, the energy in the room betrayed her. Something grave lay between them, something far heavier than a casual reunion. Marina refused to let Sarah brush things under the rug. "You haven't told him yet, have you?" she asked pointedly, turning to Julian with a calculating smile. "I'm guessing you've noticed your wife's been a bit on edge?" Sarah's eyes widened in panic, and she waved Marina toward the guest bedroom, attempting to control the conversation away from Julian's earshot. But Marina, with an air of arrogance, didn't budge. "Julian's going to find out sooner or later," she declared. "Besides, I'm tired of sneaking around. Don't you think it's time for the truth?" Julian felt a cold pit forming in his stomach. Glancing at Sarah, he saw tears welling in her eyes. "What truth?" he asked, voice almost a whisper. Sarah looked pleadingly at Marina, but Marina just shook her head. "My baby never died," she said, her voice ice cold. "I lied about the miscarriage, and I want what's rightfully mine." A trembling confusion overtook Julian. He turned to his wife, searching for any semblance of clarity, but the sheer devastation in her eyes only confirmed there was more to this story. Miscarriage? Whose baby? "Sarah, what is she talking about?" Sarah took a trembling breath. "Julian, it's not what you think. Please trust me, there's a good reason." But Marina cut her off, venom evident in her tone. "Sarah's been taking care of my baby in secret. She claims it's hers, your child even. But it's not. The baby she's carrying is mine." Julian's brain locked up, paralyzed by the tsunami of accusations. He wanted to believe it was some twisted joke. Why would Sarah raise someone else's baby? And how would that even work if Sarah was physically pregnant? "I don't understand," he stammered, looking at Sarah, noticing her trembling hands pressed protectively against her belly. Marina's lips curled into a smirk. "Trust me, Julian, there's a lot you don't understand," she said, eyeing him with a vengeful glint. "But that's why I'm here, to make sure Sarah doesn't steal my child." The atmosphere was stifling, the air thick with unspoken rage and fear. In that moment, Julian realized he was standing on the edge of an abyss, about to be plunged into revelations that defied logic. He reached for Sarah's hand, only to feel her pull away. The distance between them was suddenly too vast, and the secrets that hovered in the air were too enormous to comprehend. For the first time in his adult life, Julian Levesque felt powerless. His marriage, his upcoming fatherhood, everything he believed was anchoring him threatened to collapse under the weight of Marina Morgan's shocking presence. The drama had begun, and no one in that penthouse would ever be the same again. Unable to process Marina's words, Julian demanded answers. Sarah, shaking and teary-eyed, asked Marina to leave them alone for just a moment so she could explain. Grudgingly, Marina agreed, setting down her heavy duffel bag in the corner and stepping out onto the penthouse balcony. Her eyes lingered on Julian in a way that was both pitying and triumphant, as if savoring the chaos she'd unleashed. Sarah took Julian's hand and guided him into the master bedroom, shutting the door gently behind them. Her voice trembled. "Julian, I'm so sorry. Please, just listen to me for a moment." Julian tried to quell the storm inside him, but couldn't ignore the panic in his wife's eyes. "What's going on, Sarah? You need to tell me right now. Are you carrying someone else's baby? Are you lying to me? I need the truth. Taking a shaky breath, Sarah began her story. Remember when I told you about my hometown friend Marina? She'd gotten pregnant unexpectedly last year. The father left her, and she was desperate. She reached out to me, asked me for help. She had no money, no support, nothing. I agreed to help her financially. At first, it was just for prenatal care. Then she talked about adoption. She was going to put the baby up for adoption after birth because she couldn't handle raising a child alone. Julian listened, confusion overwhelming him. But how does that have anything to do with you being pregnant? Sarah's gaze fell to the floor, her voice barely above a whisper. Marina didn't want people to know she was pregnant. She was afraid the baby's father might come after her or that her family would disown her. So we hatched this plan. I would pretend to be pregnant in her place, so that when the baby was born, we could claim it was mine. We thought it was a safe way to give the baby a good home. We could raise the child as our own. Julian and Marina would be free from all the complications. Julian's heart hammered. You wanted to adopt Marina's baby and pass it off as ours. Sarah, that's insane. Why not just do a legal adoption? Why all the secrecy? Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks. Marina panicked. She was paranoid that the father might track her if we did anything official. And I was so eager to be a mother. After my first miscarriage last year, Julian felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He remembered that miscarriage. Sarah had wept for nights on end. Could her trauma have driven her to this desperate scheme? And then, Sarah continued, after all the planning, Marina told me she lost the baby. But apparently, that was a lie. She never miscarried. She took the money I was giving her, but hid the fact that she was still pregnant. I only found out the truth a few weeks ago. She blackmailed me, threatening to expose everything if I didn't keep supporting her. I was terrified you'd find out and leave me. Julian closed his eyes, trying to steady himself. The pieces were maddening. If Marina lied about a miscarriage, then what about you? Your belly is showing. Are you actually pregnant? Or? Sarah hesitated, her eyes brimming with anguish. I don't know, she whispered, pressing a hand against her round abdomen. At first, I thought I was faking, but then I started feeling things. Kicking. The doctor confirmed I really am pregnant. It was a miracle. Just when I thought I couldn't carry a baby to term, it happened. But with Marina in the picture, everything has gotten so messed up. She's claiming that the child inside me is somehow hers, or she wants to sabotage my pregnancy out of jealousy. I'm not even sure what she wants. The bedroom was silent, save for Sarah's muffled sobs. Julian looked at his wife's trembling form, uncertain whether to be furious or heartbroken. The situation was more convoluted than any nightmare he could have conjured. A swirl of betrayal and pity warred within him, pity for a woman so desperate to be a mother that she'd tangle herself in another's secret, and betrayal that she'd risk his trust in the process. Outside, Marina leaned against the balcony railing, her eyes fixed on the cityscape. She was waiting like a storm on the horizon, ready to unleash the next wave of drama. Little did Julian know, her intentions ran deeper than he could possibly imagine. Despite Julian's protests and Sarah's pleas for privacy, Marina refused to leave. She claimed she had nowhere else to go, and if they kicked her out, she'd be forced to expose their fraudulent arrangement to the entire world. A million thoughts raced through Julian's mind. Yes, he had power, money, and resources. But if Marina truly spread rumors that Julian's wife was orchestrating some elaborate pregnancy scheme, his public image and potentially his entire business empire could suffer irreparable damage. He decided to keep his enemy close and grudgingly allowed Marina to stay for a few days while they figured out a plan. Marina made herself comfortable in the penthouse's luxurious guest suite. She draped her clothes across the armchairs and demanded room service from the kitchen staff like she was a VIP. Each morning, she'd saunter into the living area, greeting Julian with an unsettlingly familiar smile that hinted she enjoyed his discomfort. The once harmonious atmosphere of the penthouse turned claustrophobic, with tension crackling between Sarah, Julian, and their unwelcome houseguest. At night, Julian's mind raced with questions. Was Sarah truly carrying his child, or had Marina somehow coerced her into a surrogacy-like situation? Every scenario felt more surreal than the next. Sarah, for her part, seemed emotionally drained, trying simultaneously to placate Marina and reassure Julian that their marriage was still intact. Yet an invisible wall separated them in bed. Fear, shame, and anger lingered in the silence. What sent Julian's stress skyrocketing further were subtle comments Marina dropped daily. "I remember how Sarah used to pray for a child," she'd say during breakfast, glancing slyly at Julian. "I guess prayers do come true, one way or another." Or, "You two really are lucky to have so much space. Imagine if I wanted to bring my baby here full-time." She'd grin at Sarah, who'd immediately tense up. It was a psychological chess game, and Marina seemed to be winning. One afternoon, as Julian worked in his study overlooking the skyline, he heard raised voices in the living room. Rushing out, he found Marina waving a newspaper in Sarah's face. The headline read, "Millionaire philanthropist Julian Levesque to sponsor new women's clinic." It was an interview discussing Julian's latest charitable project. Marina's laughter rang out, sharp and cruel. "Sponsoring a women's clinic, are we? That's rich, considering your wife's secret." Sarah's face turned crimson with humiliation. Julian confronted Marina. "How dare you throw that in her face? This clinic is for women who genuinely need help." The tension boiled over, and the argument escalated until Sarah, tears streaming, stumbled away to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. In the tense aftermath, Julian glared at Marina. "Why are you really here? If you just wanted money, we could have handled it quietly." Marina shrugged, leaning against the sofa. "Maybe I'm here to collect. Maybe I'm here because I don't trust Sarah to raise my child after everything she's done. Or maybe," she paused, a cunning glint in her eyes, "I just like seeing how far people will go to cover up their dirty secrets." The darkest part of Julian's mind began to suspect that Marina's intentions might be more malicious than they appeared. Was she planning to ruin his marriage on purpose? Exploit him for money? Seek revenge on Sarah for some hidden slight? The lines of loyalty, truth, and deception blurred so thoroughly that he didn't know whom to trust. That night, as Julian tried to sleep, he listened to Sarah's muffled sobs and felt the baby kicking against her belly. The sensation stirred something protective in him. No matter the web of deception, a life was growing inside his wife. He silently vowed to unearth the truth, to protect Sarah, even if part of him felt betrayed. He had to figure out a way to untangle the complicated threads that bound Sarah and Marina together before their entire world imploded. Digging deeper into the fiasco, Julian decided it was time to learn more about Marina's history. He hired a private investigator, Martin Caldwell, a discreet professional who had helped Julian's company vet potential business partners in the past. If anyone could gather the truth about Marina, it was Martin. Days passed in a tense routine. Sarah continued her prenatal appointments, now with Julian's insistence that he accompany her. Each visit confirmed that Sarah's pregnancy was on track, the baby healthy. Yet Sarah would flinch at each scan, as though terrified the entire charade might be exposed any second. Julian reassured her they needed to know the truth for their own peace of mind. Meanwhile, Marina prowled around the penthouse like a caged predator. She'd come and go at odd hours, never revealing where she'd been. More worrisome was her fascination with Julian's lavish lifestyle. She'd linger by the garage, eyeing his cars. She'd ask intrusive questions about his net worth, his shares in various companies, and any inheritance waiting in the wings. Each question sent a chill down Julian's spine, making him wonder if greed or blackmail was driving her. One evening, the private investigator called, voice low and urgent. Marina Morgan has a record, Martin revealed. Several petty theft charges, a restraining order from a previous ex-boyfriend, and a history of lying about pregnancies. She's taken child support from multiple men, claiming the child is theirs, then disappearing once payments ceased. Julian's blood ran cold. She's a con artist? Seems likely, Martin replied. She's used pregnancy scams to bilk men out of money. The father in her small town? She claimed he abandoned her, but local records show he was actually paying child support until a paternity test proved otherwise. The baby she claimed was his turned out not to exist, at least, not in that scenario. Closing his eyes, Julian fought a wave of nausea. Everything pointed to the possibility that Marina was out to exploit them. But how did she rope Sarah into this web? Before he could gather his thoughts, Martin dropped another bombshell. I found something else. She's rumored to have a hidden child. A daughter, about a year old, living with a relative in Pennsylvania, but it's unconfirmed she might have more children that she's used as pawns. By the time Julian hung up, he was shaking with a mix of anger and disgust. He needed to confront Sarah with this information unless she was already aware. But how to bring it up without causing more chaos, with Marina slithering about? Julian had to be strategic, careful. The next morning, Julian cornered Sarah after Marina left the penthouse. His voice trembled with restrained fury. How much do you really know about Marina? Did you know she's done this before? He detailed the con artist angle, the child support scams, the rumors of hidden children. Sarah's face turned ashen. No, I had no idea, she whispered. Sarah's shock seemed genuine. She sank into a chair, cradling her pregnant belly. Julian, I'm so sorry. I believed her story about being abandoned. I never thought she might be lying about the miscarriage, too. She convinced me to pretend I was pregnant so we could pass the baby off as ours. But in reality, she wanted to keep me on a leash, knowing I'd pay her anything to keep it quiet. Julian exhaled sharply, the weight of revelation crushing him. We have to end this now, he said firmly. I can't let her keep threatening our marriage, extorting us. We'll let the authorities handle it if we must. But I won't let her exploit you or this baby anymore. But Sarah seemed hesitant. She'll try to destroy us, Julian. The scandal alone could ruin your career and reputation. And I'm afraid if we push her too far, she'll harm me or the baby. She's unpredictable. He took Sarah's hand, a fierce determination in his eyes. I don't care about my reputation if it means protecting you and our child. We have resources, lawyers, and if she tries anything, we can fight back. But I need you to be honest with me, no more secrets. She nodded, tears spilling. I promise, no more secrets. Just as they embraced, the front door banged shut. Marina was home. She called out, her tone saccharine yet tinged with menace. Honey, I'm back. Goosebumps prickled Julian's skin. He and Sarah exchanged a look of grim understanding. The time for confrontation was near, but with a manipulator like Marina, one never knew when the next twist would rear its head. Several nights later, tension reached a crescendo. Julian, emboldened by the information from Martin, decided to confront Marina directly. Sarah stood behind him, pale-faced but resolved. They found Marina in the living room, lying on the couch and flipping through a high-end fashion magazine she had no intention of buying. She didn't even flinch when they walked in. She almost seemed to savor their anger. Marina, Julian began, voice steeled, we know about your past. The scams, the lies, the false pregnancies. It's over. I want you out of our home and out of our lives tonight. Marina clicked her tongue in mock disappointment, glancing at Sarah. You told him everything, didn't you? Sk, sk. After all the trouble I took to keep your secrets. My secrets. Sarah stepped forward, trembling but defiant. I've told Julian the truth. There's nothing you can threaten me with anymore. A slow smile spread across Marina's face. Is that so? Because if memory serves, you still faked a pregnancy for months, actively deceiving your husband, your friends, your entire social circle. And I have all the proof texts, emails, even voice recordings, where you practically beg me not to reveal the truth. Now, what do you think your philanthropic boards will say if that goes public, Julian? Julian's fists tightened at his sides. You can't blackmail us with that. The moment you try, we'll press charges for extortion and fraud. You'll never see a dime of my money. Oh, but I think I can, Marina purred. She reached into her duffel bag, pulling out a thick envelope. She fanned its contents, revealing photographs that showed Sarah handing Marina wads of cash, along with copies of Sarah's emails. These aren't just some half-baked rumors. I have hard evidence that your wife was part of a sham, and if you don't believe it's enough to ruin you, we can test that theory. Sarah inhaled sharply, tears threatening once again. Marina, please, don't please me, Marina snapped. You sold your soul when you agreed to help me lie about the baby. And you tried to cheat me when I told you I'd lost the child. Did you ever stop to think how that might make me feel, Sarah? A single mother with no one to turn to. Stop playing the victim, Julian interjected, fury coursing through him. You manipulated Sarah. You took advantage of her grief over her miscarriage. Now you want to keep using that to milk us. I won't stand for it. Marina rose from the couch, stepping closer until she was inches from Julian's face. Here's my offer. You pay me $500,000 in cash or offshore deposit, and I'll disappear. No press, no scandal, no photos. I'll stay away for good. Or you try to fight me, and I blow this story wide open. Think how your investors, your donors, your precious high society friends will react to such a scandal. The atmosphere was electric, a tense standoff with hearts pounding. Sarah tightened her grip on Julian's arm. Don't do it, she whispered, voice quavering. She'll just come back for more. She always comes back for more. Marina smiled darkly. Oh, so you did learn something about me after all. Guess you do your homework. Her gaze flicked between them. So what's it going to be? Pay up or get ruined? The ultimatum hung in the air, as thick and suffocating as smoke in a burning building. Julian thought of all he had built his businesses, philanthropic endeavors, the career his father had entrusted him to further. He pictured the baby growing in Sarah's womb, an innocent life soon to arrive in a maelstrom of lies and betrayal. One wrong decision could end everything. But sometimes it's only when cornered that a person finds the courage to fight back. Julian felt that spark ignite in him. Marina might have believed she held every card, but she had underestimated the depths of love and resilience, two forces that can topple even the most cunning manipulator. The next move was his. In the face of Marina's ultimatum, Julian devised a strategy. He contacted his legal team and his private investigator, Martin Caldwell, assembling a small war council. They decided to stage a setup that would catch Marina in the act of extortion, ensuring undeniable evidence that could protect Julian and Sarah in court if necessary. Quietly, Julian arranged for $500,000 in marked bills, along with a hidden camera rig in the penthouse's study. Martin would be stationed in a nearby hotel room, waiting for the signal to notify law enforcement. Sarah, though terrified, agreed to play her part. She'd call Marina into the study under the pretext that Julian was caving in, handing over the money. The night of the plan felt surreal. The penthouse lights were low, the city glittered outside like a million watchful eyes. Sarah's nerves were frayed. She paced in their bedroom, gathering the courage to lure Marina into the study without betraying the subterfuge. Julian comforted her with a steady hand on her shoulder. "We'll end this tonight," he vowed. "No more blackmail, no more lies." When the clock struck midnight, Sarah walked into the living room where Marina lounged, sipping a glass of expensive wine she had helped herself to. "Julian wants to settle," Sarah said softly, her face carefully schooled into an expression of defeat. "We have your money in the study." Marina's eyes glinted with greedy satisfaction. She set the wine down, brushing imaginary dust off her sleeves as she rose. "It's about time. Let's get this over with." Inside the study, Julian stood beside a large oak desk where a sleek briefcase rested. His expression was stony. Marina sauntered in, shutting the door behind her. "I see you took my advice," she teased, glancing at the briefcase. "I'm actually impressed. I didn't think you'd have the nerve to do it." Julian's voice came out low and clipped. "We want you gone, Marina. No more contact, no more threats, no more blackmail." She lifted the briefcase, opened it, and her eyes widened slightly at the neat stacks of bills. "This is very generous." "Should I count it?" Julian stiffened. "You'll find it's all there. Now take it and go." A smug grin spread across Marina's face. She snapped the briefcase shut. "Oh, I'll leave. But I need to make sure there aren't any nasty surprises. Maybe you have the cops waiting downstairs, or something clever like that." She took a step closer to Julian, a sultry edge creeping into her tone. "You wouldn't cross me again, would you? Because if I sense the slightest betrayal, I promise I'll sing like a canary to every tabloid in New York." Julian forced himself to maintain a steely composure. "Take the money, Marina. We're done here." Marina paused, suspicious. She studied his face, then Sarah's. At that moment, the study door burst open. It was Martin Caldwell, accompanied by two uniformed officers. The color drained from Marina's face as the officers stepped forward, badges gleaming. "New York Police Department," one said firmly. "Marina Morgan, we have evidence of attempted extortion and fraud." Put down the briefcase. For a brief second, Marina stood frozen, rage and panic twisting her features. Then she lunged, trying to shove Sarah aside and make a break for the door. But the police were faster, grabbing her arms and wrestling her to the ground. The briefcase spilled open, bills scattering like autumn leaves. Sarah pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming. Julian stood there, heart hammering, as Marina shouted curses and threats. Within moments, she was cuffed and dragged to her feet, still spitting fury. "I'll destroy you!" she screamed. "All of you! This isn't over." The police read her rights, leading her out of the penthouse. As the door slammed shut behind them, a deafening silence took hold. Julian exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Sarah collapsed into his arms, sobbing. The baby kicked, a small sign of life amidst the aftermath of chaos. For now, it seemed the devil had been dealt with. But the story wasn't over. Secrets had a way of reverberating. Julian and Sarah would soon find that Marina's venomous influence didn't end with an arrest. There were deeper implications about Sarah's past choices, Julian's public persona, and the unborn child whose identity had become entangled in a labyrinth of lies. The final chapter of their tribulation was yet to unfold. The arrest made headlines, though thankfully Marina's more salacious accusations didn't flood the tabloids yet. Julian's legal team secured an injunction to prevent the publication of unverified claims. The police charged Marina with extortion, but she posted bail swiftly. Though forced to surrender her passport, she was free to walk the streets, a vengeful spirit looming in the city's shadows. The tension within Julian and Sarah's marriage was still palpable. Sarah found it difficult to sleep, plagued by nightmares where Marina would reappear, ripping her unborn child away. Julian tried to console her, but the trust between them had been rattled by too many secrets. They tiptoed around each other, discussing the baby's name and nursery plans with forced smiles. One day, Sarah's obstetrician, Dr. Vivienne Chan, suggested an ultrasound with more detailed testing. Given the emotional stress Sarah had endured, the doctor wanted to make sure everything with the pregnancy was normal. Julian, determined to be there for Sarah, cleared his schedule to attend. In the dimly lit ultrasound room, Sarah lay on the table, belly exposed as Dr. Chan passed the wand over her skin. The black and white shapes on the monitor flickered, revealing a clear outline of a tiny human form. Julian inhaled sharply at the sight of the baby's beating heart. It was a beautiful moment, but a shadow of anxiety clung to them both. Then Dr. Chan hesitated, peering at the screen. "It's nothing to worry about, but I need to run a quick test," she said, her tone careful. She took a blood sample from Sarah, explaining it was a standard screening procedure. A few days later, the results came back. Dr. Chan called them into her office, wearing a puzzled expression. She explained that the fetal DNA sample raised an unexpected question. Julian's mind raced with dread. Had Sarah's ordeal somehow impacted the baby? Dr. Chan cleared her throat. The test indicates a discrepancy in paternity markers. In simpler terms, the baby's genetic profile suggests it's not fully biologically related to Julian. Sarah gasped, tears flooding her eyes. The look on Julian's face was heartbreak incarnate. It's possible that the earlier plan where you pretended to be pregnant somehow included an embryo from someone else, Dr. Chan said gently, or there could be a lab error. But we should confirm with a more comprehensive paternity test. Julian felt the blood drain from his face. The horrific suspicion that Sarah might have carried out a secret surrogacy plan came roaring back. Or, more insidiously, that Sarah had been unfaithful. He wanted to trust her, but the weight of everything they'd experienced made it agonizingly difficult. Devastated, Sarah sobbed in the car on their way home. "I never cheated on you," she cried. "I swear it. It has to be some mistake. I never implanted someone else's embryo. You have to believe me, Julian." He gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. "We'll do a proper test, an amniocentesis, whatever it takes. I need to know the truth." Over the next few days, the tension in the penthouse grew suffocating. Julian tried to maintain his composure, telling himself that a lab error was entirely possible. But doubts gnawed at him. Marina's manipulative hold over their lives felt far from over. Could she have somehow orchestrated this? Or was the truth more mundane? Sarah had lied again. Even as they scheduled the paternity test, Sarah insisted on her fidelity. "I love you, Julian. I've made mistakes, but I've never slept with another man. Please believe me." He nodded numbly, not trusting his voice to remain steady. Part of him wanted to hold her tight, protect her from all harm. The other part, scarred by betrayal, worried that once again he was being duped. With the test looming, both he and Sarah teetered on the edge of an emotional precipice. Unbeknownst to them, the final, most shocking twist lurked just around the corner. The day of the amniocentesis arrived. Sarah was a bundle of nerves, while Julian stood by her side, silent but resolute. The procedure was delicate, an ultrasound guiding a needle to collect amniotic fluid for genetic testing. Once complete, they were told the results would take a week. It felt like the longest week of their lives. During that agonizing wait, Marina struck again. A sensational online tabloid leaked a story hinting that a millionaire's wife was faking a pregnancy to defraud him. Though no names were mentioned, the details were suspiciously close to Julian and Sarah's situation. The phone at the penthouse buzzed relentlessly, with calls from reporters fishing for comment. Julian's PR team scrambled to perform damage control, and the emotional toll on Sarah became almost unbearable. Finally, the test results came in. Dr. Chan requested they visit her office immediately. Waiting inside her consultation room, Julian clenched Sarah's hand until his fingers tingled with numbness. Dr. Chan's grave expression as she entered was anything but comforting. She placed the file gently on her desk, inhaled deeply and began. "I double-checked the data to be sure," she said softly. "There's no mistake this time. The fetus does not share Julian's DNA. However, it's also clear that it is not genetically related to Marina Morgan. The child's DNA suggests half is Sarah's, but the paternal markers are not matching Julian or any of the typical profiles we see in standard reference labs." Sarah's eyes grew wide, tears streaming down her cheeks. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I never slept with anyone else. How can this be?" Julian's shock gave way to heartbreak and, beyond it, a terrifying suspicion. Could there have been some form of medical tampering? Perhaps someone swapped embryos in a lab? He looked at Dr. Chan. "Is there any chance this was an IVF mix-up?" Dr. Chan shook her head. "Not unless Sarah underwent IVF procedures without your knowledge. But she showed no signs of that, and her records don't indicate any such treatment." Then, a memory struck Sarah like lightning. She recalled a suspicious moment months ago when she had a routine checkup with a different clinic before. Dr. Chan began overseeing her pregnancy. There had been confusion about the identity of the patient. A nurse had asked her to confirm her name twice, scanning a barcode on a sample that wasn't hers. At the time, Sarah thought it was just a small clerical error. "I think someone switched my sample," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "Or maybe substituted an embryo. God, this is insane." Could Marina have orchestrated something that day? Julian's face darkened. "We have to investigate." If Marina was capable of extortion and conning multiple men, maybe she bribed someone at that clinic. Or it could be someone entirely different who had reason to sabotage us. But what reason? An eerie silence fell. Sarah clenched the file in her shaking hands, eyes full of haunted confusion. She loved this child growing inside her, yet the father was a complete mystery, and Julian, his entire soul, felt like it was collapsing in on itself, torn between grief and fury. A week later, an unsettling piece of the puzzle slid into place. Martin Caldwell called with urgent news. A nurse at the original clinic had been questioned about a possible sample mix-up. She confessed she'd been threatened and paid by an unknown woman to swap Sarah's test results with another patient's IVF materials. That unknown woman matched the description of Marina Morgan. All signs point to Marina orchestrating a forced surrogacy scenario, Martin explained. If the father was the IVF clinic's other male patient, then it means the baby isn't Julian's, but Sarah is the one carrying the embryo. The revelation was mind-numbing. Marina's final revenge, it seemed, was to ensure that Sarah bore a child that neither she nor Julian had intended biologically fathered by a stranger. The full extent of Marina's scheme might never be known, but it reeked of a twisted desire to destroy their relationship from the inside out. In the end, Julian refused to abandon Sarah. The child was innocent, and despite the agony of betrayal, he saw that Sarah was also a victim. They pressed charges against Marina for conspiracy and medical fraud. As the legal wheels turned, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Though she was not Julian's by blood, he was there in the delivery room, cradling the infant. The moment she came into the world, tears flowed as Sarah saw the unconditional love in his eyes. Despite everything, their relationship would never quite be the same. Trust had been shattered, and they needed couples therapy and a lot of soul searching to rebuild any semblance of stability. But in that hospital room, the three of them, Julian, Sarah, and the baby, formed a fragile new bond. It was a testament that, even amid the darkest betrayals, love could still bloom, albeit with scars. Marina, charged and wanted for questioning, vanished shortly after posting bail. Rumors placed her in Europe, while some claimed she'd returned to that small town to hide. Whatever her fate, the legacy of her deception would forever mark Julian and Sarah's lives. Yet as they looked down at the baby, softly cooing in her hospital bassinet, they vowed that her future would be unmarred by the sins of the past. They'd confront the public scandal, handle the fallout of their reputations, and sort out the baby's legal identity. But for one tender moment, father, mother, and child stayed quietly together, a poignant illustration of the resilience born from heartbreak. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of lies, heartbreak, and redemption. In the end, Julian and Sarah faced the unimaginable, a shocking conspiracy that disrupted their marriage and lives. Marina's deception threatened to destroy them, but their unbreakable resolve gave them the strength to fight back, unearthing a twisted scheme so audacious it was almost unimaginable. Through it all, they chose love over despair and family over betrayal, welcoming an innocent child into their world despite her tumultuous beginnings.
From the outside, Jonathan Cole's life gleamed like a storybook fairy tale. A self-made millionaire in the heart of Manhattan, he graced glossy magazine covers mingled with world leaders and never missed a chance to flaunt his success. Yet behind the tall glass windows of his penthouse, tensions brewed. A secret text here, a guarded phone call there, and rumors whispered of a tangled affair that threatened to explode. Meanwhile, Alicia Cole, his pregnant wife, began to sense the cracks in her gilded cage. No one, least of all Jonathan, suspected how quickly a single online leak would unravel his carefully manicured world, ending his career in the span of one unforgettable night. Jonathan Cole's story was the stuff of modern legend. Born to middle-class parents in suburban New Jersey, he had clawed his way to a scholarship at Harvard Business School. There he'd rubbed shoulders with future magnates, forging alliances that would later propel him to the top of the finance world. By age 32, Jonathan had founded Cole Capital Ventures, a private equity firm that specialized in distressed real estate assets, buying low, selling high, and weaving magic in between. His good looks and suave charm made him a darling of the business press. Forbes ran a feature titled Young Titan, Jonathan Cole's meteoric rise, capturing him in a tailored navy suit against the panoramic backdrop of New York City. In the interview, he praised mentors such as Warren Buffett for teaching him patience and Bill Gates for demonstrating philanthropy on a global scale. The crowning moment, though, was his picture-shaking hands with Elon Musk after a speculative investment in aerospace startups. Jonathan glowed with the certainty that he was destined for greatness. It was at a fundraiser in Central Park that he first met Alicia Martinez. She was a non-profit consultant with a passion for arts education. Where Jonathan's approach to conversation was slick and polished, Alicia's was empathetic and earnest. He found her refusal to be dazzled by his reputation oddly refreshing. She was there to talk about underfunded public schools, not hedge funds or leveraged buyouts. By the end of that charity walk, Jonathan had her phone number, and she had a curious spark in her heart. In 2 short years, they were married. Alicia's parents, humble owners of a small bakery in Queens, couldn't believe their daughter was wedding a man so frequently mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. But to Alicia, Jonathan wasn't simply the millionaire. He was the person who showed up unannounced to volunteer at her community events, who wrote personal checks for after-school programs. Their wedding ceremony, held at a historic mansion overlooking the Hudson River, was a glamorous yet heartfelt affair. The tabloids brimmed with gushing coverage, Alicia radiant in lace, Jonathan dashing in a classic tuxedo, smiling as though they had discovered the secret to eternal happiness. At first, their union genuinely seemed magical. Jonathan declared that Alicia grounded him, tethered him to values he might have otherwise forgotten. She brought soul to his ambition. Life in the Cole penthouse sparkled with promise, lavish soirees for global dignitaries, altruistic ventures to build schools in underprivileged neighborhoods, and daily bursts of joy that only two people deeply in love could share. If only that bliss could have lasted. Life moved quickly in Jonathan's orbit. The success of Cole Capital Ventures brought new deals, new acquaintances, and inevitably new pressures. Over time, Alicia witnessed the subtle changes in her husband's routine. Invitations from the global elite poured in exclusive dinners with real estate mogul Mark Anderson, lunches at the Plaza with famed venture capitalist Lucy Goldstein, and hush-hush strategy sessions with foreign sovereign funds. While Alicia supported her husband's drive, she couldn't ignore the increasing cracks in his calendar or in his demeanor. He began coming home later, offering vague explanations about urgent meetings or unexpected negotiations. Alicia, ever understanding, reassured him that she respected his hustle. But then came the cancellations of their personal plans. A date to watch an off-Broadway show cancelled. A weekend getaway to the Hamptons postponed. Birthdays and family gatherings became second-tier priorities. The more she tried to reach him, the more she felt a certain emotional distance creeping in. Around the office, Jonathan was surrounded by loyalists and ladder climbers alike. One of them was David Lynn, his longtime friend from Harvard, and now partner at Cole Capital. David had witnessed Jonathan's evolution firsthand. He noticed subtle changes too, Jonathan's sharper edge during conference calls, the tension behind his charismatic smile during business pitches. Yet David trusted that a man as resourceful as Jonathan always had it under control. Among the staff at Cole Capital Ventures was also the bright and ambitious Veronica King. A recent Wharton MBA graduate, Veronica had made waves by closing a multi-million-dollar investment in green technology within her first year at the firm. Her intelligence and striking beauty made her a conversation piece at every corporate event. Jonathan lauded her as the future face of finance, praising her for deals that posted triple returns. He found in Veronica a reflection of his younger self, hungry, driven, and fearless. Still none suspected that an alliance far different than business was about to form. At this point, Alicia had no idea who Veronica King truly was. She saw her name in passing on annual reports. Occasionally, Jonathan would mention Veronica's accomplishments, praising her for innovative thinking. Alicia would nod and smile, impressed by this rising star. In Alicia's mind, she was grateful Jonathan had formidable professionals like Veronica on his team. She never once suspected that the very power he admired in his protégé might be forging a dangerous temptation beneath their polished corporate veneer. As Alicia's pregnancy crept into her second trimester, she began noticing odd details. The first warning sign was a perfume scent she didn't recognize lingering on Jonathan's coat. She asked him about it casually, and he brushed it off, probably from a handshake at some networking event. Another red flag was how he protected his phone like a prized artifact, always face down, always locked with a new passcode. Late at night, she'd hear the faint buzz of messages, see the subtle glow of his screen as he typed back in the dark. Each time she tried to rationalize away her concerns. This was the man she loved, who donated millions to build libraries in underserved communities, who cried at the birth announcement, who once surprised her on a random Tuesday with her favorite pastries from her parents' bakery. Infidelity seemed unimaginable. Yet Alicia's heart churned with a subtle, gnawing dread. Life in the Cole penthouse had become increasingly solitary. Although Jonathan had promised to limit business travel during her pregnancy, his schedule remained as frenetic as ever. Singapore, Dubai, Paris. He was always on the go, chasing new mergers or expansions. He rarely spent more than a couple of nights at home. When he did, he was restless, glued to emails or brainstorming calls. Alicia began to feel that the only presence she could truly count on was the baby she carried. Friends from Alicia's old neighborhood in Queens reached out with concern. They missed her visits the way she used to pop in for coffee and conversation. "He's just going through a busy phase," she'd reassure them. In a way, Alicia was trying to reassure herself too. Still, doubt grew every time she caught sight of that mysterious perfume, or saw a new bruise-like shadow under her husband's eyes from sleepless nights. Then Alicia found something chilling, a hotel receipt tucked in Jonathan's suitcase from a high-end resort in Turks and Caicos. The date overlapped with a weekend he'd told her he was in Boston, closing a deal. She tried to confront him, but lost her nerve. Could she have misunderstood? Was it a courtesy booking for a client or staff? Her mind ran in circles, seeking a plausible explanation. Little did she know the truth was far more insidious. Veronica King was not the sort of woman who blended into the background. With ebony hair styled in a sleek bob, she carried herself with confident ease. By day, she dazzled boardrooms with crisp financial analyses, commanding respect from colleagues twice her age. By night, she appeared in social columns alongside Manhattan's elite, her emerald dress shimmering under paparazzi flashes. She was rumored to have grown up in modest circumstances, determined to break ceilings, no matter the cost. One evening, Alicia found herself accompanying Jonathan to a charity gala, hosted by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Proceeds would benefit underfunded art programs in public schools, an event that aligned perfectly with Alicia's passion. Upon arriving, Alicia felt the old sparkle of excitement hobnobbing with notable figures like gallery owners, educators, and philanthropic entrepreneurs. A group of Jonathan's colleagues from Cole Capital Ventures greeted them, among whom was Veronica. This was their first real introduction. "Ah, the legend herself," Veronica said, with a radiant smile, extending her hand to Alicia. "Jonathan speaks so highly of you, and all the wonderful work you do with school kids." Alicia returned the greeting, struck by Veronica's grace. She was everything Alicia imagined a high-flying finance star, to be polished, assertive, exuding an air of subtle power. When Alicia mentioned her involvement in drafting new arts curricula, Veronica listened attentively, nodding as though she truly cared. The conversation was pleasant, even warm. Yet Alicia caught a flicker of something unspoken between Veronica and Jonathan, a shared glance that felt too intimate, too layered with private meaning. Throughout the gala, Alicia couldn't shake the sense that eyes were on them, as if the rest of the guests sensed an undercurrent. She told herself she was imagining it, that she was just hormonal and overthinking, but a tiny voice inside her whispered, "Veronica King is more important to Jonathan than you realize." By the evening's end, Alicia felt unsettled. Jonathan excused himself to take a call, just when Alicia was beginning to share her feelings about an educational campaign. Veronica also vanished into the throng of socialites. Alicia sipped her sparkling water in awkward solitude, noticing a faint swirl of that same unfamiliar perfume drifting through the air. After the gala, Alicia began piecing together subtle patterns. Jonathan had singled Veronica out in so many conversations, praising her as a strategic genius, marveling at her ability to close deals in weeks that took others months. In the past, Alicia had been proud whenever Jonathan mentored bright up-and-comers. Yet with Veronica, the tone of his praise sounded tinged with personal adoration. One morning, Alicia found herself with a free schedule and decided to surprise Jonathan at his office with homemade pastries, his favorite almond croissants from her parents' bakery. It was a gesture she used to do often, back when everything felt normal. Arriving unannounced, Alicia was greeted by the wide-eyed receptionist, who stumbled through a hello, as though not entirely sure how to handle her presence. She brushed it off and headed down the glass-walled corridor to Jonathan's corner office. Outside his door, Alicia froze. Through the partial opening, she heard lowered voices. Jonathan and Veronica seemed to be in the middle of a heated discussion, but not in an angry sense, more like an emotionally charged conversation. Alicia didn't want to eavesdrop, yet she couldn't will herself to move. Then she clearly heard Veronica say, "We'll figure this out, Jonathan. I'm not giving up on you." A brief silence followed, and then Jonathan's voice, softer. "I know. Just not here." Alicia's heart hammered in her chest. She quickly retraced her steps and waited by the reception area, forcing a casual expression when Veronica exited the office moments later. Veronica paused in surprise upon seeing Alicia with the pastry box. "Oh, hi. I didn't know you'd be stopping by." Her voice carried an undercurrent of tension, though her face remained impeccably calm. Alicia's fingers clenched around the box as she managed a tight smile. Their brief exchange ended with Veronica slipping away in a swirl of designer perfume. Alicia approached Jonathan's office next. He greeted her with mild surprise and a forced grin. "Almond croissants, wow," he said, accepting the box. His eyes flicked to the door, as if confirming Veronica was gone. Alicia asked if he was all right, and Jonathan dismissed it as office stress. The entire moment felt like a carefully choreographed dance, with unspoken tensions swirling around them. That night, Alicia hardly slept, twisting the memory of Veronica's words over and over in her mind. "I'm not giving up on you." She remembered how intimate they sounded, like a promise between lovers rather than colleagues. Uncertainty blossomed, overshadowing even the joys of her pregnancy. She told herself she needed proof before leaping to conclusions that might destroy her marriage. Still, the seeds of suspicion had taken root, and the soil of her heart felt unbearably cold. Despite mounting worries, Alicia maintained her public smile as she accompanied Jonathan to another high-profile event, the annual City of Tomorrow Gala. Headlined by luminaries in real estate, tech, and philanthropy, it was a can't-miss affair for anyone jockeying for influence. Jonathan was especially eager to network with Tony McAllister, a legendary investor rumored to be launching a multi-billion-dollar fund. Alicia planned to share her vision for an educational project that integrated cutting-edge technology into underfunded schools, hoping to drum up philanthropic support. The venue was lavish, a 5-star hotel ballroom overlooking Central Park. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and violin music mingled with the hum of high-stakes conversation. Alicia wore a flowing cobalt gown, tailored to accommodate her growing baby bump. She felt both regal and uneasy, noting the stares from various acquaintances. She wondered if she was imagining the undertones of gossip in their voices when they greeted her. About an hour into the gala, Veronica King swept in, wearing a sequined emerald dress that seemed to catch every flicker of light. She joined Jonathan, who stood near a champagne fountain, exchanging pleasantries with Tony McAllister. Veronica's arrival sparked a shift in the air. Jonathan's posture straightened, and there was a palpable current of electricity as they spoke. Alicia approached, heart thudding. She joined the circle just in time to hear Jonathan praising Veronica. She single-handedly brought in an Indonesian sovereign fund for our latest project. Imagine what she'll do next year. Veronica laughed softly, thanking him, while shooting a quick, coded look in his direction. That fleeting glance felt like a secret confession. Tony McAllister then turned to Alicia, politely inquiring about her philanthropic interests. Seizing the opportunity, she shared her concept for bridging education gaps through advanced technology. Though Tony listened, Alicia sensed a general distraction in the group, as if her words were overshadowed by the silent drama swirling between Jonathan and Veronica. She pressed on regardless, determined to stand her ground. Partway through the evening, Alicia watched from across the ballroom as Jonathan and Veronica slipped out onto the balcony. Their silhouettes formed tense outlines in the moonlight. Alicia could almost feel the strain in their stances. When they returned, Jonathan was stone-faced, while Veronica looked tearful. The rest of the gala played out in a haze, Alicia's mind spinning with questions. Why was Jonathan risking such a public display if he truly had nothing to hide? On the ride home, Jonathan was silent. Alicia debated whether to confront him. Fear of the truth won out. She remained quiet, letting the hush fill the back seat like a suffocating blanket. One thing was certain: the veneer of their marriage was cracking fast. Weeks after the gala, Alicia woke one morning to a series of text messages from unknown numbers. Each one contained the same cryptic statement: "You deserve better. Check your emails." Shaken, she logged into her personal email account and found an anonymous note with an attachment. The note read, "He's not who you think he is. Trust me, I work with them. This has gone on too long. You should know." Hands trembling, Alicia opened the attachment. Her eyes widened at what she saw. Screenshots of phone call logs, countless late-night messages and photos from Veronica King, all addressed to Jonathan. Some were innocuous, referencing business deals, but others were clearly personal phrases like, "Missing you last night was unforgettable and can't wait until we're alone again," leaped off the screen. A wave of shock crashed over Alicia. She felt like she was floating outside her body, watching herself shatter. She reread the messages, searching for any plausible explanation besides the obvious. Perhaps they were fabricated, or maybe there was some context missing. Yet the depth and frequency of the conversations were undeniable. Jonathan had been carrying on a secret affair with Veronica, and someone inside Cole Capital, or close to them, had decided to expose it. Through her tears, Alicia tried to remain rational. She recognized some of the timestamps. They aligned perfectly with nights Jonathan claimed to be overseas or tied up in emergency meetings. Worse, there were photos of the two at a private beach, Veronica in a sun hat, Jonathan leaning into her with a tenderness Alicia once believed was reserved only for their marriage. The date stamps matched the weekend he was supposedly in Boston. Alicia doubled over as waves of nausea seized her, uncertain if it was morning sickness or heartbreak. She clutched her phone, tears splashing onto the screen. The anonymous tip had obliterated any chance of maintaining her illusions. Betrayal now stood naked before her, leaving no room for doubt. She scrolled through the messages again, feeling her grief transform into rage. She was pregnant with this man's child, while he gallivanted with another woman behind her back. Was this what their marriage was worth? In desperation, Alicia tried calling Jonathan. No answer. She left a trembling voice message. "We need to talk. Now." Then she buried her face in a pillow, sobbing until exhaustion closed her eyes. The world felt cruel, and she wondered if she had the strength to confront what came next. Jonathan returned home late that evening to find Alicia sitting on the living room couch, the glow of a single lamp illuminating her tear-streaked face. The instant he saw her reddened eyes, he knew something had changed. She said nothing at first, only holding out her phone. He glanced at the screen and visibly paled. Silent seconds stretched as he read through the texts and pictures. Alicia noticed the flicker of guilt crossing his face before he masked it with a forced calmness. "Where did you get these?" he asked, voice low. "Does it matter?" she replied. "They're real, aren't they?" He exhaled shakily, dropping into a seat across from her. "It's complicated. Veronica and I don't want excuses." Alicia's voice trembled with quiet fury. "I want to know how you could do this while I'm pregnant with your child." Jonathan looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "It started as a mistake, Alicia. I was at a conference. We had too much to drink." "That's not an excuse," she snapped. "You lied to me for months." "No years, given these time stamps. You made me doubt my own sanity." He tried to speak, but the words choked in his throat. Instead, tears brimmed in his eyes. Alicia found it almost pitiful. She had once adored this man, who seemed larger than life. Now he looked small, lost, and pathetic, snared in the aftermath of his own betrayal. Eventually, he confessed to an ongoing affair with Veronica. They had grown close while working on high-stakes deals. Their relationship escalated during out-of-town conferences, fueled by adrenaline and the thrill of secrecy. Jonathan insisted it was never about love, but about tension relief and escaping the pressures he faced at Cole Capital. His rationale shattered the last vestiges of Alicia's sympathy. She pointed to her baby bump. "What about me? Your child. Did you ever think about the risk emotionally? Physically?" Jonathan attempted an apology, but the words felt hollow. Alicia erupted pent-up fury, spilling out in a storm of accusations. She recounted every suspicious sign she'd overlooked, how she'd supported his career, how she had endured him missing prenatal appointments. Underneath her anger lay a deep sadness for the life she thought they were building, a life that Jonathan had so casually betrayed. By the time the confrontation ended, Alicia felt emotionally gutted. Jonathan slept in his study that night, if he slept at all. She stared at her bedroom ceiling, tears soaking her pillow, wrestling with how to move forward. The next morning, she awakened to the knowledge that her heartbreak was only beginning, and so was Jonathan's downfall. In the days following Alicia's discovery, Jonathan scrambled to patch up his personal and professional worlds. He promised Veronica he would handle the situation, but that Alicia would always be his priority. He reassured Alicia that he would end the affair immediately, that he would do whatever it took to save their marriage. However, Alicia watched his panic with an air of detachment. Her trust in him was already shattered. Then came the social media explosion. One Monday morning, a popular finance gossip blog, The Street Whisperer, posted a scathing article, "Billionaire Jonathan Cole's Secret Affair, Exposed Exclusive Photos." The piece included leaked pictures of Jonathan and Veronica embracing in what appeared to be a private cabana at a tropical resort. The blog teased additional salacious details forthcoming. Within hours, major business news outlets like Bloomberg and CNBC picked up the story, albeit more cautiously. They framed it as a scandal rocking Cole Capital Ventures. Stock forums buzzed with speculation about how this might affect Jonathan's leadership and the firm's reputation. On Twitter, finance influencers dissected the ethical implications, with some calling for Jonathan to step down. Jonathan's phone lit up with calls from board members, investors, and perplexed clients. Even Lucy Goldstein, who had once praised him for philanthropic endeavors, publicly condemned his distraction from the greater mission of ethical business. The timing was disastrous. He had been on the cusp of finalizing a massive investment partnership with Tony McAllister. Now everything was in jeopardy. Alicia, reading the news coverage with weary eyes, felt a surge of anger. She had never wanted a public scandal. She would have preferred a private reckoning. But now that the world knew, she felt oddly vindicated. No longer was she alone in suspecting Jonathan's duplicity. Everyone saw it. Even so, she worried about the toll this uproar might exact on her unborn child. Less than 24 hours later, a video surfaced of Jonathan and Veronica walking hand in hand through a hotel lobby in Paris, laughing as though they didn't have a care in the world. The date stamp revealed it was just 2 months prior, around the same time Alicia had told him about her pregnancy. Public outrage soared and investors panicked. Jonathan's carefully curated brand, self-made entrepreneur, philanthropic benefactor, devoted husband, was crumbling under a relentless digital onslaught. In the midst of the uproar, Alicia received a second anonymous email. This time it contained receipts of hush money, transfers from Jonathan's personal account to an offshore entity, with references to Veronica's name. The sender wrote, "He's been paying to keep certain things quiet. Thought you should know." Alicia's heart pounded as she examined the evidence. It looked like Jonathan had been funneling funds, possibly to secure Veronica's silence or cooperation. The sum was staggering enough to fund a dozen scholarships or a new arts program in any given school. The revelation further corroded Alicia's hope that Jonathan could ever be the man she once believed him to be. She confronted him the following evening, brandishing printouts of the transactions. "You're bribing her now. Is this blackmail?" "Hush money." "What else have you been hiding?" Jonathan, cornered, admitted. He'd been trying to preempt any public scandal, fearing precisely what was happening now. Veronica wanted compensation for her efforts on certain deals, he claimed. She threatened to go to the competition, or worse, to the media. "I had to protect our company, our name." "Is this your idea of protection?" Alicia spat tears stinging her eyes. "Lying, paying people off, it's disgusting. You betrayed me, betrayed your own ethics if you ever had them." Jonathan's face twisted. "Don't say that. I messed up. But everything I did was to protect us, to keep the family intact." Alicia laughed bitterly, clutching her pregnant belly. "And how's that working out for you? The world knows now. You might lose everything. And me. I don't know if there's any us left to protect." She stormed out, leaving Jonathan staring at the damning documents. On the street, Alicia's mind whirled. She felt trapped, tied by marriage, soon to be tied by parenthood, yet confronted with the ultimate betrayal. The outside world offered no solace, either its eyes fixated on the spectacle of Jonathan's downfall. For a moment she wondered if leaving the city altogether would be the only way to save her sanity. But deep in her heart, Alicia knew she had to stand and face the storm, if not for herself, then for the child growing inside her. Within a week, Jonathan's scandal dominated the business news cycle. Forbes ran an op-ed titled "The Tragic Fall of Finance's Golden Boy," analyzing how personal irresponsibility could sink even the most profitable venture. Share prices for coal, capital ventures nosedived, rattling the firm's board of directors and raising alarms among major investors. Social media took an especially brutal stance. Under the hashtag #CoalCollapse, thousands commented on Jonathan's hypocrisy, calling him a poster child for toxic corporate culture. Alicia's name also trended, though more sympathetically. Strangers on the internet expressed solidarity for a pregnant wife betrayed on a global stage. Some urged her to take him for all he's worth, while others championed her as a potential advocate for women wronged by powerful men. Within Cole Capital's walls, tension soared. The workforce split into factions. Some remained loyal to Jonathan, believing the scandal was a personal matter that shouldn't overshadow his accomplishments. Others blamed him for tarnishing the company's name, an act of negligence that jeopardized everyone's jobs. David Lynn tried to calm internal chaos, but rumors circulated that half the board wanted Jonathan removed. Veronica, for her part, took a leave of absence, claiming stress from the public harassment. No one knew if she'd be back. Amid the chaos, Alicia found herself hounded by reporters camped outside the penthouse, cameras and microphones at the ready. She refused to answer questions or open the door, feeling the walls close in on her. Her phone buzzed with calls from tabloids, offering huge sums for an exclusive interview. She declined them all. Journalists even visited her parents' bakery, peppering them with invasive questions. Her mother, Lucia, called Alicia in tears, apologizing for not knowing what to do. Alicia felt a wave of guilt. Her private tragedy had become a public spectacle, and those she loved were collateral damage. Deep inside, a new resolve formed. Alicia realized she had the power to shape her own narrative, rather than let the scandal swirl around her uncontested. She was the wronged party. She had a voice, and if she spoke, the world would listen. Whether that voice would bring healing or further destruction, she didn't yet know. But she was done sitting quietly, while Jonathan's duplicity overshadowed her entire life. During one sleepless night, Alicia stared at old photos on her phone. Her and Jonathan beaming at their wedding, her reading to children at the community center, him unveiling a giant check for a local library. The happy memories contrasted so sharply with the heartbreak she now endured. She felt betrayed not just by Jonathan, but by the entire facade of perfection they once presented. At some point, she scrolled through messages of support from friends, even strangers on social media. People urged her to fight to stand up for herself and her unborn baby. She mulled over the idea of making a public statement, something to reclaim her dignity, but also to call out Jonathan's actions without stooping to sensationalism. Her phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for what you're going through. If you need a platform to share your side, we have your back." Signed, Anna Brooks, women's advocate today. Alicia recognized the name Anna Brooks as a well-known journalist and feminist advocate. Anna's open letters had previously brought attention to issues like wage gaps and domestic abuse. The text felt genuine, a rare sign of compassion in a media landscape that often thrived on sensationalism. Alicia's heart pounded. Could she trust Anna to handle her story ethically? The next morning, Alicia called Anna. Their conversation lasted almost an hour. Anna listened without interruption, as Alicia spoke of her heartbreak, her isolation, and her fears for her future. She clarified that her aim wasn't to harm Jonathan's career out of spite, but to stand up for her own life and child. Anna offered to arrange a press conference, a controlled environment where Alicia could present her perspective. No tabloid spin, no paparazzi ambush. Alicia agreed, though the decision left her trembling with anticipation and dread. That afternoon, Alicia met with a lawyer who specialized in marital law. She wanted to understand her rights, especially with a baby on the way. While part of her considered divorce, another part still grappled with the love she'd once felt for Jonathan. The lawyer recommended caution, explaining how a public statement might influence settlement negotiations or custody issues. Alicia nodded gravely, fully aware that once she spoke publicly, there would be no going back. In just a few days, Anna Brooks secured a small event space in Midtown, not far from Times Square. The press invite was circulated discreetly among reputable journalists and media outlets. The announcement was simple: Alicia Cole, wife of Jonathan Cole, to make a statement regarding recent events. Despite the short notice, the event attracted major attention. Producers from major networks like CNN, MSNBC, and even BBC reached out, eager to broadcast the story of a betrayed wife taking a stand against her millionaire husband. Anna Brooks handled logistics, ensuring Alicia would have privacy to arrive and depart without being mobbed by cameras. In the background, Alicia's lawyer hovered, uneasy about how the press conference might affect legal proceedings. Still, Alicia was resolute. This was her narrative to tell. On the eve of the press conference, Alicia worked on her statement in a quiet corner of her parents' bakery, inhaling the comforting scent of fresh bread. Her mother brought her a warm mug of chamomile tea, gently stroking her daughter's hair. "You'll do what's right," Lucia whispered, eyes filled with motherly concern. Alicia's phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "Please don't do this. We can fix it privately. Think of our child." She stared at the words, bitterness surging. She typed back, "It's too late for that. You should have thought of our child before you betrayed us." Then she turned off her phone, refocusing on the words she planned to read before the world. Inside her, a swirl of emotions raged: heartbreak, anger, but also an underlying sense of empowerment. She was no longer the supportive wife in the background of Jonathan's success story. She was stepping forward, pregnant and wounded, but ready to claim her truth. Whatever happened next, she promised herself she would be honest, not just for herself, but for all the women who had reached out, telling her to be strong. A brisk wind blew through Manhattan on the morning of Alicia's press conference. Cameras were already set up by the time she arrived, escorted by Anna Brooks. The modest venue could seat about 100 reporters, but more were spilling out the door, forming a crowd on the sidewalk. A hush fell as Alicia stepped onto the small stage, her baby bump subtly outlined beneath a black wrap dress. Anna stood beside her like a protective shield. Flashes lit the room. Alicia took a deep breath, heart pounding so loudly she feared the microphone would pick it up. She glanced at her note cards, then at the sea of expectant faces. She began, voice trembling at first. "Good morning. My name is Alicia Cole, and I'm here to speak about the scandal involving my husband, Jonathan Cole, and his affair with Veronica King. For weeks now, I've watched as this story has been told by tabloids, blogs, and the rumor mill. Today, I want to present the truth from my perspective." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "I have been married to Jonathan for 3 years, and we are expecting a child. I believed in him, stood by him, built a life with him. But I recently discovered, along with the rest of the world, that he was engaged in an extramarital relationship. I have read the same articles, seen the same images. They are devastating, especially given my pregnancy." Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every flicker of emotion on her face. Alicia continued, her voice growing steadier. "I do not share this to invite pity or to be a pawn in a public spectacle. I share it because women mothers deserve the truth when it comes to the integrity of the men we marry. And because I believe accountability matters, whether you're a private individual or a public figure who touts ethical leadership." She then revealed Jonathan's attempts to cover up the affair, even referencing hush money documents. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Alicia clarified, "I stand here not to destroy Jonathan Cole, but to claim my future and the future of my child free from deception. I believe marriage is a partnership built on trust, and once that trust is broken so thoroughly, we must face the reality of what remains. With tears brimming, Alicia concluded, I'm asking for privacy and respect as I decide the next steps for my family. I'm grateful for the outpouring of support. My hope is that by speaking my truth, I can begin healing and perhaps encourage others facing similar betrayal to do the same. She stepped back from the podium, a trembling hush sweeping the room. Cameras zoomed in on her tear-streaked face as Anna guided her away. The press conference had lasted less than 10 minutes, but it was enough to ignite a media firestorm that would shake Jonathan Cole's empire to its core. The press conference footage went viral within hours, dominating TV headlines and flooding social media timelines. Clips of Alicia's trembling yet resolute voice played on a loop. Hashtags like #AliciaCole and #Truth4 Women trended globally. Celebrity talk show hosts weighed in praising her bravery. Prominent women's advocacy groups hailed Alicia as a hero for publicly confronting the betrayal. Jonathan Cole, meanwhile, faced an immediate backlash. Investors who had hesitated to sever ties earlier now flocked away from Cole Capital Ventures in droves, unwilling to align themselves with a leader so publicly indicted by his own wife. The firm's stock plummeted further. A joint venture with Tony McAllister was placed on indefinite hold. In a statement to the press, Tony cited concerns about leadership ethics and stability. Inside Cole Capital, the board of directors convened an emergency meeting. The consensus was grim. Jonathan's personal scandal had become a public relations nightmare. A formal vote of no confidence was scheduled for the following week to decide his future at the company he'd built from scratch. Some long-time allies still defended him, claiming that personal issues shouldn't overshadow professional achievements, but they were outnumbered by those pointing to the spiraling finances and brand damage. Jonathan retreated to the penthouse, blinds drawn, refusing to comment publicly. Even Veronica King was nowhere to be found, rumored to be on an extended stay in London. For Alicia, the whirlwind of support and media attention felt surreal. Every time she logged online, she saw strangers praising her courage, dissecting her press conference, or labeling Jonathan a monster. She had never wanted to be the face of a movement, but she felt a growing sense of responsibility to use the platform fate had handed her. In private, she grappled with heartbreak and anxiety about the future. She had awakened in a gilded cage, her wealthy lifestyle now overshadowed by betrayal. Yet the press conference had sparked something new, a sense of agency. For the first time since discovering Jonathan's affair, she could breathe freely, certain she was controlling her own path. And that path would soon demand another step, deciding whether to stay in the marriage or proceed with a legal separation. At Cole Capital Ventures, the board of directors convened the crucial vote. The meeting room had never felt so tense. David Lynn sat at one end of the table, his face grim. Over half the chairs were occupied by men and women who once revered Jonathan as a visionary. Now they stared at financial projections, plummeting into the red, accompanied by slideshow images of negative media headlines referencing the Cole scandal. The intangible toll, public distrust, moral outrage, was just as damaging. Jonathan, face pale and eyes rimmed with exhaustion, delivered a desperate plea. He promised to rectify the situation, citing therapy crisis management strategies and a vow to refocus on the firm's core mission. "I've made mistakes," he admitted hoarsely. "But our track record of delivering value can't be overlooked. We are bigger than one scandal. We can still thrive if we stay united." Some board members shifted uncomfortably. A few, including David Lynn, tried to salvage the conversation, arguing for a temporary leave of absence instead of outright dismissal. But the majority believed drastic action was required to restore credibility. A hush blanketed the room as the members cast their anonymous votes. When the tallies were read, the verdict was clear. Jonathan Cole was removed as CEO, effective immediately. Tremors of shock rippled through the halls. Cole Capital employees, once starry-eyed by Jonathan's leadership, watched him clear his office with a mix of pity and muted anger. A caretaker CEO was appointed to stabilize the ship, focusing on damage control. David Lynn glanced at Jonathan with a sorrowful expression as security escorted him out. "I'm sorry, man," David whispered. "I tried to fight for you." Jonathan nodded wordlessly, clutching a box of personal belongings. By evening, business publications around the world proclaimed Cole Capital ousts founder amid scandal. Jonathan's reign was officially over. The man who once soared across the financial stratosphere was now unemployed, disgraced, and teetering on the edge of complete ruin. Jonathan's life unspooled in disarray. With no office to report to, he holed up in the penthouse, ignoring calls from journalists. He occasionally ventured out in sunglasses and a baseball cap, only to be ambushed by paparazzi. Online comments labeled him a cautionary tale of greed and infidelity. Some articles even suggested the affair had been an open secret among New York's finance circles, fueling new levels of scrutiny. Personal finances also took a hit. Jonathan's sudden exit from Cole Capital triggered contractual penalties. He faced possible breach of contract lawsuits tied to deals he'd spearheaded but failed to close. Frozen lines of credit cancelled invitations to VIP events. His social and financial power dwindled. Amid his downward spiral, Jonathan tried repeatedly to contact Alicia, leaving voicemails and handwritten notes. He apologized profusely, claiming he was ready to do anything to salvage their relationship. "I'll go to counseling, sign post-nups. Anything you want. One note. Red." But Alicia remained resolute, focusing instead on her own well-being and that of her unborn child. The final blow came when Alicia's press conference was replayed in a prime-time special, with a commentary panel dissecting Jonathan's betrayal. The segment ended with a heartfelt interview of Alicia by Anna Brooks, highlighting Alicia's philanthropic ambitions. Footage showed Alicia visiting an after-school program, receiving cheers from children who recognized her from news coverage. In that moment, the camera panned to Alicia's determined face, capturing her transformation from betrayed spouse to empowered advocate. Jonathan watched the segment alone, a half-finished bottle of scotch by his side. He saw how the public now regarded Alicia with admiration, a stark contrast to his own vilification. In a moment of clarity, he realized he was witnessing the rise of a woman who had once stood quietly beside him, someone he'd taken for granted. Shattered by regret, he continued drinking until the lights of the penthouse blurred into darkness. While Jonathan sank deeper, Alicia was busy forging a new path. Through Anna Brooks's media connections and her own philanthropic background, she organized a fundraiser for underprivileged schools. The event was set to be a smaller, more authentic affair than the high-gloss galas Jonathan once frequented. The proceeds would go toward bridging the digital divide in low-income neighborhoods, an initiative Alicia had championed long before the scandal. As the date approached, Alicia found herself gaining supporters from unexpected places. Tony McAllister, once interested in partnering with Jonathan, reached out privately. He expressed admiration for Alicia's courage and inquired if she'd accept a donation from his philanthropic foundation. She graciously agreed, grateful for the unwavering backing. Others in the business world, previously enthralled by Jonathan, now saw Alicia as an emerging figure with moral authority. Invitations to speak at leadership panels trickled in ironically, offering her the spotlight once promised to her husband. Meanwhile, Alicia took steps to secure her future. Working with a lawyer, she prepared for a potential divorce filing. She also met with a financial advisor, ensuring she understood the complexities of Jonathan's assets and any marital entitlements. Each step felt daunting, yet liberating, as she realized she no longer had to abide by the illusions of a perfect marriage. In a surprising twist, David Lynn approached Alicia discreetly. He apologized on behalf of Cole Capital, acknowledging that many within the firm admired her. "We know Jonathan's downfall was his own doing," David admitted. "We'd like to work with you in some capacity, maybe an advisory role on the philanthropic side." Alicia hesitated, uncertain about maintaining ties to an institution so entangled with Jonathan's betrayal. Still, she considered the possibility of effecting positive change from within. Days turned into weeks as Alicia balanced philanthropic planning, potential legal battles, and the emotional toll of pregnancy. Through it all, she maintained her composure, fueled by a sense of purpose. While part of her still grieved the betrayal, she also recognized a budding strength. Her identity was no longer solely Mrs. Jonathan Cole. She was Alicia Cole, a force in her own right. One brisk afternoon, as Alicia returned to her parents' bakery for a quiet meeting with donors, she found Jonathan waiting near the doorway, slumped against a lamppost. He appeared disheveled, unshaven eyes bloodshot, wearing a crumpled blazer. The sight startled her, stirring both pity and residual anger. "Please," he said, voice strained. "Just a moment of your time." She considered walking past him, but compassion nudged her to pause. She let him follow her inside, where they settled at a back table amid the comforting aroma of fresh pastries. Lucia glanced over worriedly from the counter, but respected her daughter's privacy. Jonathan exhaled shakily. "I've lost everything, my job, my reputation. I can't lose you too. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm begging you to give me another chance." Alicia felt tears prick her eyes, though she kept her composure. "Another chance to do what? You've lied to me, cheated on me, humiliated me publicly." He pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. "I know. I was an idiot. I was greedy, arrogant. The money, the power, it consumed me. Veronica was just a symptom of my own weaknesses." "That doesn't erase what you did," Alicia murmured. "It doesn't take back the night you were with her while I lay at home, excited to share baby news with you. It doesn't undo all the heartbreak." Jonathan lowered his head, tears slipping down his cheeks. Alicia recognized genuine remorse in his eyes, but she also knew it might be too late. "If you need me to sign anything," he whispered, "custody agreements, child support. I'll do it. I just want to be part of the baby's life." The request struck a chord deep within Alicia. Their child deserved a father, but was Jonathan capable of the responsibility? She wrestled with conflicting emotions, the memory of happier times, and the fresh sting of betrayal. Finally, she said, "I can't make that decision right now. I need time. But this much is clear. You have to deal with the consequences of what you've done on your own." Jonathan nodded, head bowed in defeat. Before leaving, he offered a small envelope. "In case you want to reach me. That's my new number." Then he slipped out into the cold afternoon, a broken man, still clinging to a shred of hope. In the following weeks, Alicia immersed herself in planning her fundraiser, channeling her emotions into a cause that symbolized new beginnings. The event space was modest, a converted art gallery in Brooklyn, yet the atmosphere radiated warmth. Donors included local business owners, educators, and some philanthropic heavyweights. Alicia opened the evening by sharing her own story, not focusing on the scandal, but on the importance of forging a brighter future for the next generation. The fundraiser turned into a soaring success, raising more funds than Alicia had anticipated. Attendees praised her vision, and media coverage highlighted her commitment to positive change, contrasting starkly with Jonathan's tarnished reputation. Standing at the podium, Alicia felt a rush of empowerment. As she thanked the crowd, her hand drifted to her baby bump. She realized that in building a better world for others, she was also building a better world for her child. Not long after Alicia filed for legal separation, citing irreconcilable differences. The move was symbolic as much as legal, a declaration that she was no longer tethered to Jonathan's fate. Public interest in the scandal waned, replaced by fresh headlines as the news cycle moved on. Life was still challenging, but Alicia awoke each morning with a renewed sense of purpose, surrounded by supportive friends and family. As for Jonathan, rumors suggested he had entered therapy and was considering launching a smaller financial consultancy if he could find backers. Some whispered that he was volunteering at a youth center, seeking to rediscover the philanthropic spark that once defined him. Whether these rumors were genuine or just strategic, Alicia didn't know. Occasionally she thought about letting him be involved with the child, but she needed reassurance that he had truly changed. Alicia's belly grew, and so did her resolve. She had discovered her voice in the midst of betrayal, learning that her worth wasn't measured by a man's success or the illusions they spun together. The conclusion of this saga was not a bitter end, but rather the blossoming of her independence. She carried with her the lessons of heartbreak, the joy of impending motherhood, and a determination to rise above any scandal that dared to overshadow her future. The downfall of Jonathan Cole and the rise of Alicia Cole stand as a testament to life's unpredictable turns. A single leak online dragged a powerhouse billionaire into ruin, yet it also became a spark for his pregnant wife to find her voice, her mission, and her freedom. Betrayal can devastate, but it can also illuminate truths we've long buried. Alicia transformed her heartbreak into a crusade for better opportunities, showing that even in the darkest moments, we have the power to rebuild and sometimes shine brighter than ever before. If this story moved, you don't let it end here. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama and compelling narratives. Your support helps us continue bringing stories of resilience, empowerment, and the triumph of the human spirit. Stay tuned for our next riveting tale, because when one door closes, another door swings open, often revealing a whole new world of possibilities. Meanwhile, Alicia Cole, his pregnant wife, began to sense the cracks in her gilded cage. No one, least of all Jonathan, suspected how quickly a single online leak would unravel his carefully manicured world, ending his career in the span of one unforgettable night. Jonathan Cole's story was the stuff of modern legend. Born to middle-class parents in suburban New Jersey, he had clawed his way to a scholarship at Harvard Business School. There he'd rubbed shoulders with future magnates, forging alliances that would later propel him to the top of the finance world. By age 32, Jonathan had founded Cole Capital Ventures, a private equity firm that specialized in distressed real estate assets, buying low, selling high, and weaving magic in between. His good looks and suave charm made him a darling of the business press. Forbes ran a feature titled Young Titan, Jonathan Cole's meteoric rise, capturing him in a tailored navy suit against the panoramic backdrop of New York City. In the interview, he praised mentors such as Warren Buffett for teaching him patience and Bill Gates for demonstrating philanthropy on a global scale. The crowning moment, though, was his picture-shaking hands with Elon Musk after a speculative investment in aerospace startups. Jonathan glowed with the certainty that he was destined for greatness. It was at a fundraiser in Central Park that he first met Alicia Martinez. She was a non-profit consultant with a passion for arts education. Where Jonathan's approach to conversation was slick and polished, Alicia's was empathetic and earnest. He found her refusal to be dazzled by his reputation oddly refreshing. She was there to talk about underfunded public schools, not hedge funds or leveraged buyouts. By the end of that charity walk, Jonathan had her phone number, and she had a curious spark in her heart. In 2 short years, they were married. Alicia's parents, humble owners of a small bakery in Queens, couldn't believe their daughter was wedding a man so frequently mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. But to Alicia, Jonathan wasn't simply the millionaire. He was the person who showed up unannounced to volunteer at her community events, who wrote personal checks for after-school programs. Their wedding ceremony, held at a historic mansion overlooking the Hudson River, was a glamorous yet heartfelt affair. The tabloids brimmed with gushing coverage, Alicia radiant in lace, Jonathan dashing in a classic tuxedo, smiling as though they had discovered the secret to eternal happiness. At first, their union genuinely seemed magical. Jonathan declared that Alicia grounded him, tethered him to values he might have otherwise forgotten. She brought soul to his ambition. Life in the Cole penthouse sparkled with promise, lavish soirees for global dignitaries, altruistic ventures to build schools in underprivileged neighborhoods, and daily bursts of joy that only 2 people deeply in love could share. If only that bliss could have lasted. Life moved quickly in Jonathan's orbit. The success of Cole Capital Ventures brought new deals, new acquaintances, and inevitably new pressures. Over time, Alicia witnessed the subtle changes in her husband's routine. Invitations from the global elite poured in exclusive dinners with real estate mogul Mark Anderson, lunches at the Plaza with famed venture capitalist Lucy Goldstein, and hush-hush strategy sessions with foreign sovereign funds. While Alicia supported her husband's drive, she couldn't ignore the increasing cracks in his calendar or in his demeanor. He began coming home later, offering vague explanations about urgent meetings or unexpected negotiations. Alicia, ever understanding, reassured him that she respected his hustle. But then came the cancellations of their personal plans. A date to watch an off-Broadway show cancelled. A weekend getaway to the Hamptons postponed. Birthdays and family gatherings became second-tier priorities. The more she tried to reach him, the more she felt a certain emotional distance creeping in. Around the office, Jonathan was surrounded by loyalists and ladder climbers alike. One of them was David Lynn, his longtime friend from Harvard and now partner at Cole Capital. David had witnessed Jonathan's evolution firsthand. He noticed subtle changes too, Jonathan's sharper edge during conference calls, the tension behind his charismatic smile during business pitches. Yet David trusted that a man as resourceful as Jonathan always had it under control. Among the staff at Cole Capital Ventures was also the bright and ambitious Veronica King. A recent Wharton MBA graduate, Veronica had made waves by closing a multi-million-dollar investment in green technology within her first year at the firm. Her intelligence and striking beauty made her a conversation piece at every corporate event. Jonathan lauded her as the future face of finance, praising her for deals that posted triple returns. He found in Veronica a reflection of his younger self, hungry, driven, and fearless. Still none suspected that an alliance far different than business was about to form. At this point, Alicia had no idea who Veronica King truly was. She saw her name in passing on annual reports. Occasionally, Jonathan would mention Veronica's accomplishments, praising her for innovative thinking. Alicia would nod and smile, impressed by this rising star. In Alicia's mind, she was grateful Jonathan had formidable professionals like Veronica on his team. She never once suspected that the very power he admired in his protégé might be forging a dangerous temptation beneath their polished corporate veneer. As Alicia's pregnancy crept into her second trimester, she began noticing odd details. The first warning sign was a perfume scent she didn't recognize lingering on Jonathan's coat. She asked him about it casually, and he brushed it off, probably from a handshake at some networking event. Another red flag was how he protected his phone like a prized artifact, always face down, always locked with a new passcode. Late at night, she'd hear the faint buzz of messages, see the subtle glow of his screen as he typed back in the dark. Each time she tried to rationalize away her concerns. This was the man she loved, who donated millions to build libraries in underserved communities, who cried at the birth announcement, who once surprised her on a random Tuesday with her favorite pastries from her parents' bakery. Infidelity seemed unimaginable. Yet Alicia's heart churned with a subtle, gnawing dread. Life in the Cole penthouse had become increasingly solitary. Although Jonathan had promised to limit business travel during her pregnancy, his schedule remained as frenetic as ever. Singapore, Dubai, Paris. He was always on the go, chasing new mergers or expansions. He rarely spent more than a couple of nights at home. When he did, he was restless, glued to emails or brainstorming calls. Alicia began to feel that the only presence she could truly count on was the baby she carried. Friends from Alicia's old neighborhood in Queens reached out with concern. They missed her visits the way she used to pop in for coffee and conversation. He's just going through a busy phase, she'd reassure them. In a way, Alicia was trying to reassure herself too. Still, doubt grew every time she caught sight of that mysterious perfume, or saw a new bruise-like shadow under her husband's eyes from sleepless nights. Then Alicia found something chilling, a hotel receipt tucked in Jonathan's suitcase from a high-end resort in Turks and Caicos. The date overlapped with a weekend he'd told her he was in Boston, closing a deal. She tried to confront him, but lost her nerve. Could she have misunderstood? Was it a courtesy booking for a client or staff? Her mind ran in circles, seeking a plausible explanation. Little did she know the truth was far more insidious. Veronica King was not the sort of woman who blended into the background. With ebony hair styled in a sleek bob, she carried herself with confident ease. By day, she dazzled boardrooms with crisp financial analyses, commanding respect from colleagues twice her age. By night, she appeared in social columns alongside Manhattan's elite, her emerald dress shimmering under paparazzi flashes. She was rumored to have grown up in modest circumstances, determined to break ceilings, no matter the cost. One evening, Alicia found herself accompanying Jonathan to a charity gala, hosted by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Proceeds would benefit underfunded art programs in public schools, an event that aligned perfectly with Alicia's passion. Upon arriving, Alicia felt the old sparkle of excitement hobnobbing with notable figures like gallery owners, educators, and philanthropic entrepreneurs. A group of Jonathan's colleagues from Cole Capital Ventures greeted them, among whom was Veronica. This was their first real introduction. "Ah, the legend herself," Veronica said, with a radiant smile, extending her hand to Alicia. "Jonathan speaks so highly of you, and all the wonderful work you do with school kids." Alicia returned the greeting, struck by Veronica's grace. She was everything Alicia imagined a high-flying finance star, to be polished, assertive, exuding an air of subtle power. When Alicia mentioned her involvement in drafting new arts curricula, Veronica listened attentively, nodding as though she truly cared. The conversation was pleasant, even warm. Yet Alicia caught a flicker of something unspoken between Veronica and Jonathan, a shared glance that felt too intimate, too layered with private meaning. Throughout the gala, Alicia couldn't shake the sense that eyes were on them, as if the rest of the guests sensed an undercurrent. She told herself she was imagining it, that she was just hormonal and overthinking, but a tiny voice inside her whispered, "Veronica King is more important to Jonathan than you realize." By the evening's end, Alicia felt unsettled. Jonathan excused himself to take a call, just when Alicia was beginning to share her feelings about an educational campaign. Veronica also vanished into the throng of socialites. Alicia sipped her sparkling water in awkward solitude, noticing a faint swirl of that same unfamiliar perfume drifting through the air. After the gala, Alicia began piecing together subtle patterns. Jonathan had singled Veronica out in so many conversations, praising her as a strategic genius, marveling at her ability to close deals in weeks that took others months. In the past, Alicia had been proud whenever Jonathan mentored bright up-and-comers. Yet with Veronica, the tone of his praise sounded tinged with personal adoration. One morning, Alicia found herself with a free schedule and decided to surprise Jonathan at his office with homemade pastries, his favorite almond croissants from her parents' bakery. It was a gesture she used to do often, back when everything felt normal. Arriving unannounced, Alicia was greeted by the wide-eyed receptionist, who stumbled through a hello, as though not entirely sure how to handle her presence. She brushed it off and headed down the glass-walled corridor to Jonathan's corner office. Outside his door, Alicia froze. Through the partial opening, she heard lowered voices. Jonathan and Veronica seemed to be in the middle of a heated discussion, but not in an angry sense, more like an emotionally charged conversation. Alicia didn't want to eavesdrop, yet she couldn't will herself to move. Then she clearly heard Veronica say, "We'll figure this out, Jonathan. I'm not giving up on you." A brief silence followed, and then Jonathan's voice, softer. "I know. Just not here." Alicia's heart hammered in her chest. She quickly retraced her steps and waited by the reception area, forcing a casual expression when Veronica exited the office moments later. Veronica paused in surprise upon seeing Alicia with the pastry box. "Oh, hi. I didn't know you'd be stopping by." Her voice carried an undercurrent of tension, though her face remained impeccably calm. Alicia's fingers clenched around the box as she managed a tight smile. Their brief exchange ended with Veronica slipping away in a swirl of designer perfume. Alicia approached Jonathan's office next. He greeted her with mild surprise and a forced grin. "Almond croissants, wow," he said, accepting the box. His eyes flicked to the door, as if confirming Veronica was gone. Alicia asked if he was all right, and Jonathan dismissed it as office stress. The entire moment felt like a carefully choreographed dance, with unspoken tensions swirling around them. That night, Alicia hardly slept, twisting the memory of Veronica's words over and over in her mind. "I'm not giving up on you." She remembered how intimate they sounded, like a promise between lovers rather than colleagues. Uncertainty blossomed, overshadowing even the joys of her pregnancy. She told herself she needed proof before leaping to conclusions that might destroy her marriage. Still, the seeds of suspicion had taken root, and the soil of her heart felt unbearably cold. Despite mounting worries, Alicia maintained her public smile as she accompanied Jonathan to another high-profile event, the annual City of Tomorrow Gala. Headlined by luminaries in real estate, tech, and philanthropy, it was a can't-miss affair for anyone jockeying for influence. Jonathan was especially eager to network with Tony McAllister, a legendary investor rumored to be launching a multi-billion-dollar fund. Alicia planned to share her vision for an educational project that integrated cutting-edge technology into underfunded schools, hoping to drum up philanthropic support. The venue was lavish, a 5-star hotel ballroom overlooking Central Park. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and violin music mingled with the hum of high-stakes conversation. Alicia wore a flowing cobalt gown, tailored to accommodate her growing baby bump. She felt both regal and uneasy, noting the stares from various acquaintances. She wondered if she was imagining the undertones of gossip in their voices when they greeted her. About an hour into the gala, Veronica King swept in, wearing a sequined emerald dress that seemed to catch every flicker of light. She joined Jonathan, who stood near a champagne fountain, exchanging pleasantries with Tony McAllister. Veronica's arrival sparked a shift in the air. Jonathan's posture straightened, and there was a palpable current of electricity as they spoke. Alicia approached, heart thudding. She joined the circle just in time to hear Jonathan praising Veronica. She single-handedly brought in an Indonesian sovereign fund for our latest project. Imagine what she'll do next year. Veronica laughed softly, thanking him, while shooting a quick, coded look in his direction. That fleeting glance felt like a secret confession. Tony McAllister then turned to Alicia, politely inquiring about her philanthropic interests. Seizing the opportunity, she shared her concept for bridging education gaps through advanced technology. Though Tony listened, Alicia sensed a general distraction in the group, as if her words were overshadowed by the silent drama swirling between Jonathan and Veronica. She pressed on regardless, determined to stand her ground.